Hello and welcome to Inside Athletics, a show all about high school sports here in Robeson County and surrounding counties. It's produced here at WNCP TV. I'm your host, Jonathan Ben from the Robesonian, and joining me today on the first episode of 2019 are Donnell Coley, also from the Robesonian, and Brandon Tester from the Laurinburg Exchange. Guys, great to be back.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, so the weather's turned cold as compared to the last time we were here in the studio for football season, but the action indoors with basketball is starting to heat up. Local teams in the Three Rivers and Sandhills athletic conferences are halfway through their conference season, and now is when the rubber hits the road for these teams that have aspirations of making the postseason. So far, we've seen some surprises in the conference title races, like the Fairmont boys, who have a very slim chance of keeping their conference championship streak alive for the ninth season, and and there's still the usual crowd up there that have been there in the past year. So what are we going to do now is going to break down just what we've seen the last 2 months of basketball ever since from November to now. So no one has had a more roller coaster season, I would assume. I mean, maybe there's some team out in the mountains that's probably had a crazy season, but the boys basketball team from Purnell Sweat, after starting hot and winning the Robeson County shootout over Lumberton, the Rams shooting star is falling out of the sky right now with losses in 6 of their last 7 outings, most recently with a loss at Hoke last night. So Donnell, you were on the scene. What did you see?
I just saw what I've been seeing since the shootout. They are inconsistent at this point in time of the season, especially with the loss now of Xavier Jones. That's their MVP of the shootout. They look lost. They are struggling with their identity now. They're turning the ball over in the second half. They had a 3-point lead last night against Hope, and they lost by double digits, so they're lost.
Yeah, no conference wins since winning the shootout. Their only win was over Sherrall. I saw Monday against South Brunswick and UNCP signing Jace McKinney. And like you said, they did look lost. They didn't know where to go to. They didn't know who to find scoring from. It's been those two guys of Rufus Harris and Dariante Parker. And then we talked about this yesterday in the office about the disappearance of Zach Carter. What have you seen from his game really has changed the last couple of days?
It's like he needs that extra guy. It's like his best friend is gone. Like, when you're in elementary school and your best friend just leaves and moves out of town or something like that, that's how it looks for him. He usually gets easy buckets from outlet passes from Xavier. So, I mean, he's still the same player. I know he's fast and he plays defense and he gets hustle points, but he definitely looks, a little, I wouldn't say depressed, but he lost his best friend, so. Yeah, that's his guy.
I had a best friend named Zach in elementary school too, so it really hits home for me.
Full circle.
So, Brandon, you told us about this before the shootout that Purnell wasn't all that good. They lost to Scotland to open up conference play back in December. What was your impressions from that game from the Purnell boys?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is my impression was that Purnell was, actually a pretty decent basketball team that was just having an off day when they played at Scotland. I mean, it seemed like they had a couple of good pieces there with Xavier and Zach, and even Zach Carter just kind of. I mean, it wasn't he was making a whole bunch of mistakes. It was just things weren't going for him. He just wasn't finding those opportunities, and Xavier was having a pretty good day on the boards, and it just seemed a little off. So I was kind of surprised to see them, do as poorly as they have been up to this point. And I think maybe it'll be a better matchup when Scotland goes and plays at Purnell. So we'll have to see about that.
Yeah, interesting to see. Xavier Jones really has been missing both not only his scoring but his rebounding for Purnell Sweat. So it'll be interesting to see how they close out. And they're now 8-8 overall in the season, and both Purnell Sweat teams are in last place in the Sandhills Athletic Conference standings. So staying in that same conference, Lumberton has claimed runner-up in both sides of the shootout last month, and now the girls under first-year coach Sam Davis are hanging around near the top of the conference, much like the boys team. So Brandon, you saw Lumberton most recently at Scotland. What did you see from those two games? Obviously, it was a Lumberton and Scotland split, with Lumberton taking the girls' game, Scotland taking the boys' game in dramatic fashion.
Yeah, on the girls' game, Lumberton has some size to them, and Scotland doesn't really have a lot of size on the girls' team. Scotland basically has one primary post player, and Lumberton has a couple themselves. So that kind of helped them out getting boards and kind of controlling the pace of the game a little bit. And that's just something that Scotland's girls teams struggled with a lot this year. On the boys' side, Lumberton has talent, and Scotland was kind of struggling. I mean, they still are struggling, but they were kind of in a divot when they faced Lumberton. And I think Scotland finally started clicking a little bit in that game, and that wasn't anything Lumberton could stop. It was this kind of momentum. I mean, obviously Scotland won that on a game winner, which, that kind of contested corner three, that probably only goes in 10 or 20% of the time anyway. But it was a good game, and Lumberton did have a chance to, take that game. They missed some key free throws down the stretch. So.
Yeah, they mentioned how the team's leading scorer, Jordan McNeil, went down with an injury in the third quarter, seemed to really be hampered. He only finished with 9 points. Came back against Purnell Sweat on Friday night and had a pretty good outing with 24 points. But just how did that really change the dynamic of Lumberton without Jordan McNeil out there?
Well, that's pretty crucial for them. I mean, he's a playmaker, he's a guy who can kind of make his own shot. There's even, I think he said he scored 9 points against Scotland, and, some of those were just, kind of improbable drives to the basket where he made something out of nothing, and that's what he's really good at doing. So they really did miss him out there, and even in that game they were, kind of doing their own thing on the boards too with guys like Braylon out there. So it wasn't like they were relying on him heavily, but he's definitely a good guy to have on the court.
Yeah, and for Donnell, what do you see going forward with Lumberton? It seemed like the boys' team hit a little bit of a skid last week, losing to Scotland and Richmond, the two worst teams in the conference essentially, and then beating up on Purnell Sweat, and now also on the girls' side.
Well, the boys, I think, it's just all about how they deal with distractions and, overcoming those distractions and staying focused. So, with that being that they are, one of the best teams in the conference, they are going to have their chance to make their claim. So I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, so Brandon, you cover Scotland with the Laurinburg Exchange. We'll mention them. They're both sitting in 7th place, both teams in the conference standings right now. What are you seeing from those teams right now? It seems like they're still trying to figure some things out.
Yeah, they're both kind of struggling with some of the same things. I talked about, just size on the girls' side, but also they're just kind of young right now, and, they're kind of struggling a little bit with IQ. That'll get better as time goes on, but that's just a slow process, and they get flustered pretty easily. I mean, a lot of these games where they're competing in them, it's it kind of changes when the other team changes their defense from a zone to a man, or they start pressing, because then Scotland gets flustered. And then on the boys' side, they kind of had some bad luck with a couple key guys, including Bruce Wall, who tore his ACL during football season, who aren't playing this year, and then so that kind of set things back a little bit early in the season. And then, they have athletes. It's just, learning how to convert on, your open opportunities, learning how to be aggressive with the basketball. They're kind of getting a little bit better on getting the ball inside and getting rebounds and getting second chance opportunities, but, it's just really growing pains right now.
Yeah. And so in the past, this league normally sends 4 teams to the playoffs. And looking at the standings now, Donnell, on both sides, which teams do you see earning some state playoff bids?
I think it starts with Lumberton. They're definitely, like I said, one of the best teams at that conference in the county. They're going to be there. I would say Purnell with the way they started, but, they turned it around the last few games. They'll be there as well. St. Paul's is definitely one of the top teams in the Three Rivers. So, in the county, they're one of the top teams as well. So just snapped an 8-game streak for them, winning streak for them. So they'll be there. And then the girls' side, Lumberton, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see after that. I know it's Lumberton, and a lot of teams with suspensions and stuff like that might affect their playoff chances. So.
Yeah, so Donnell, you mentioned the Three Rivers Conference, and in those races for the regular season championship, they've turned to be anything but competitive, as West Columbus on the boys' side and East Bladen on the girls' side seem to be a few weeks away from claiming conference titles by a handful of games over the rest of the pack. And under those teams is where it gets interesting, and a monkey wrench has got thrown into the conference standings on Friday night when South Robeson and St. Paul's met. The contest was called in the third quarter when a brawl broke out. No word from the state on what's going to happen. There's some suspensions. We obviously saw what happened with South Robeson last night, but all signs point to St. Paul's and South Robeson losing playoff eligibility and possibly some games in the coming weeks with players being forced out to sit. So, Donnell, what kind of implications do you see that coming for those two teams that were in that altercation?
This is unfortunate. Like I said, we pretty much expect them to lose their playoff eligibility at this point. We already know that a few girls are suspended for at least 2 games, so most likely 4. So that's the majority of their teams, and looks like their season, unfortunately, is coming to an end.
Yeah, in the boys contest, St. Paul's fell in overtime to South Robeson. What is the dynamic of both those teams on the boys' side coming forward?
South Robeson looks really good at this point in time. They're a really good home team. They've only lost one at home this year, so it wasn't a surprise that they beat West Bladen the way they did last night. Cameron Worrell is looking like a county MVP candidate, county player of the year candidate. He had 39 points, 17 rebounds last night. He's had a double-double, I don't know how many consecutive games. So if they get the point guard back, Page, if they get him back, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and through all the trials and tribulations of this season, Red Springs is still in the playoff picture, amazingly. We didn't think, we basically wrote them off with a lot of improvement coming on the girls' side. So, Brandon, despite losing that core group of last year on this girls' side that you saw, what has Coach Robert Dove done to help out this team?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a tough start to the year for them, you know, a couple of lopsided losses. I think they started about 1-5, 1-4, 1-5, so that was kind of, you know, on top of those circumstances to start out the way they did, losing by so many points. I think he's done a pretty decent job of getting him back on the right track. I mean, it's tough to get, you know, your mentality back after that start, but he's done a good job so far, so they have a good future ahead of them.
Yeah, Coach Dove could easily be the coach of the year in the county this season. So for Donnell, the Red Springs boys have been the difference. The difference has really just been getting that young group in position to where they are now. What has been that change?
You know, I think it's just more of who's going to step up now. You know, that's what they're looking for as far as closing out games and controlling the pace and rebounding. So I think they're starting to form their identity as far as a whole team, a collective unit. And, you know, they took a loss last night as well. So they're up and down, and they're searching for consistency.
Yeah, it feels weird to say this, but last but not least, Fairmont is on the bottom of the county list as far as basketball is concerned. The girls are still searching for that first win that has evaded them all season, and it's been nearly a full calendar year since they've had that first win, while the young Fairmont boys team is still searching for the right pieces to earn wins on consistent basis. So, Donnell, what's been the general impressions from Fairmont this year on the girls' side?
Oh, the girls' side, they are really inexperienced, and you know, that shows. They don't have a win on the season. That's a really inexperienced team. They struggle to get any offense going. They don't have a go-to player. So on nights where they don't play defense, it gets really bad. So they'll just have to keep pushing, just try to keep you know, doing what they can to get that first win.
Yeah, and so Brandon, real quickly, you saw Fairmont close out the season last year at Clinton in the regional semifinals, actually. So what have you seen different from this group this year that's struggling?
Yeah, last season they had a real system going, and that kind of started with guys like Derek Arnett, who can kind of get things done on both sides of the ball. But like you said, it's a new group, so you know it's just a different outlook for them this year. Strange almost.
Yeah, it is to see them struggling right now. Now, with still a month left in the regular season before conference tournament rolls around, there's still a lot to be decided. It's a busy Friday night of hoops action takes place this week. We'll have updates on those games and more on the next show next week, so we'll have both y'all back in the studio. Should be another exciting Wednesday covering some basketball from the Friday before. So once again, we'd like to thank the crew here at WNCP TV for their work on the show. For Brandon Tester and Donnell Coley, I'm Jonathan Bim. Thanks for tuning in to Inside Athletics.